Hi, good morning. Just a few short words. Victor Meyer Schoenberger, as you just heard, is the author of this book, Big Data, A Revolution That Will Transform How We Live and Work. He'll be doing a book signing afterwards, so please come and meet him. On a personal note, I just want to let you know that I read that book. We used the proposals that he has made to submit what was called the DARPA RAM grant. In such an approach, we have already 40,000 recordings from human brains and are unraveling the mysteries of memory. So with that in note, we've asked Victor Meyer Schoenberger to come here and tell us why is big data transforming the way we live, work, and think. Dr. Meyer Schoenberger.
Thank you so much. Good morning. I am so excited to be here today because I don't know anything about neurosurgery. But I know a little bit about data, a little bit about how we deal with data. And with your permission, I'd like to tell you a little bit about it. Now, a lot of people look at data and think that big data in particular is just a tool. A new tool in the tool set of evidence-based medicine, a new tool in the tool set of the science revolution. And there's some truth to that. But I'd like to ask you to go beyond that, to understand that this is not just a tool. This is really a new perspective on reality. A new way of looking at things that was unfamiliar for us and is still unfamiliar for us because it's new and because it's based on data. Now let me tell you an actual case to explain what big data can do in terms of insights. And it has to do with something that many of you are familiar with. I certainly am, and that is the seasonal flu. A few years back, though, you may recall a new flu virus was discovered, the H1N1 virus, and health professionals around the world feared that that virus, for which we didn't have a vaccine available, might kill hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people. So the best that health authorities could do around the world was to try to contain the spread of the virus, but for that they needed to know where the virus actually was. Public health authorities around the world have procedures for that, including the CDC's here in the United States. In fact, the CDC has a very professional group of people that work very hard to tabulate the data that they get from medical professionals out in the field, and then are able to make a prediction of the actual flu vaccine and its distribution in the population 2 weeks earlier. Which, if you have a deadly pandemic at your hand, is pretty much useless. Right around the same time, engineers at a company that has nothing to do with medical had a very different idea of how to predict the spread of the flu. The idea was to just look what people are searching for online. That is to look at Google search queries. Now, Google receives sufficient search queries, 5 billion a day, and not only has captured these search queries over the last week or the last month or the last years, but since its inception. More than 15 years, almost 20 years of search queries, including when they were made and when they, where they came from and what search results people clicked on. Now, the idea was for Google to take historical flu data and to take historical search queries and to find out whether there was a correlation. After crunching about 450 million mathematical models, they found a mathematical model that with a high degree of likelihood predicted the spread of the flu just by looking at what people search for. Here you see the official CDC data and the Google model overlaid. Now, what is remarkable is not that this is a pretty good fit, but what is remarkable is that where the CDCs and other public health authorities around the world can only look 2 weeks into the past, Google can make this prediction in real time. That's what big data is about. Now, a new perspective on reality, a new insight that we didn't have before, and based on that, better decisions, because it's decisions that we're all facing. Decisions about whether to take the left road or the right road. If we have better insights into our world, we can make better decisions. But wait a minute. Wait a minute, Meyer Schoenberg, you're going to say, isn't that what we have been doing all along, using data? Yes, since the beginning of time. We human beings have used data in order to make sense of the world by observing it. But since the beginning of time also, we human beings have understood that capturing that data and analyzing it is time-consuming and costly. And so you know what we did? We devised processes and methods. We devised institutions and structures to squeeze the most meaning out of the least amount of data, because we implicitly understood we live in a world of data poverty. We live in a world of small data in which too little is available for us, and so we always have to squeeze the tiny amount that we have available. But what if that changes? What if the amount of data that we can collect and can analyze is easy to increase, at low cost and fast? Then we may rethink some of the methodological paradigms that we have based our scientific revolution on. We may be prompted to look out of the old paradigm, like this gentleman here, when the world was still flat, and to see the world in a different view. We'll find out relatively soon, because we are at the cusp of a data revolution. It began maybe 15, 20 years ago in the natural sciences. Take astronomy. When the Sloan Digital Sky Survey, a telescope, came online in the year 2000, it collected more astronomy data in the first month of its operation than had been collected in the entire history of astronomy. Over the last 15 years, this one telescope collected over 200 terabytes of astronomy data. But a follow-on project, the new telescope, here you see the rendering that's coming on stream this year, is going to collect that amount of data, 200 terabytes, every 5 days. The best estimate that we have on how this plays out globally is that the amount of data in the world grew 100-fold from 1987 to 2007 alone. In 20 years, a 100-fold increase. When we go back into human history, when this happened the last time, historians tell us we have to go back 1455 to 1505, when in 50 years, thanks to the Gutenberg printing revolution, the amount of data in the world doubled. And here we have 100 times increase, a 100-fold increase in 20 years. But that's only half the story. The other half of the story is denoted by these two different colors in the graph. The light pink color, analog data, and the dark purple color denotes digital data. This vertical line here is the year 2000, not so long ago. Still remember it. Year 2000, 3/4 of data was still analog. Today, half a generation later, less than 1%. So within half a generation, we have moved from an analog world to a digital world. And that means we have more tools available to do data analysis at low cost. Now, why does this matter? Well, let's take a metaphor from photography. Think about a rider on a horse. If you have a photograph of a rider on a horse, you have data. But let's increase the quantity to say, take a picture of a rider on a horse every second. What do you have? More pictures of a rider on a horse. But let's increase the quantity even further to, let's say, 16 pictures taken per second of a rider on a horse. Then the additional quantity translates into a new quality. And that is precisely the promise of big data, that quantity translates into quality. Now, why is this so important? Let me do an experiment with your permission here. I'll take out my camera. It used to be called a mobile phone, but we all know it's really a camera. And so I'm going to take a picture of you. Smile. You back there, the gentleman with the blue shirt, could you smile too? Thank you. See, as I'm taking this picture here, I have to make an important choice. The important choice is, do I focus on you in the first row, then you're going to be blurry in the back there, despite the fact that you smiled so nicely, or I'm going to focus on you back there, and you're going to be blurry. In other words, as I collect the data, already need to know what kind of questions I want to answer with the data that I am collecting. If I make a mistake and focus on the wrong person, and I notice the mistake by looking at the picture tomorrow or so, I can't go back in history and retake the picture. It's too late. And then mistakes happen, like here, where I've taken a picture in the front, in focus, and a toothbrush. In the back, I'm sorry, out of focus, my then 3-year-old son. My wife is scolding me for that picture. I made a mistake. Can't redo it, can I? Well, actually, ladies and gentlemen, I can in this big data age, because this is not a normal photograph anymore. Photography is small data. This is taken with a big data camera called the LightRAW, a light field camera that takes data from all light rays. And so after the fact, I can do these kind of things. I go to this picture and I just, let me see, try to touch my son, and he comes into focus. After the fact, ladies and gentlemen, because all the data is present and not just a small subset anymore. And the same is true, of course, if I want to focus on the toothbrush. I can select what kind of question I want to have answered after I have collected the data. Now, this goes against the existing paradigm, right? The existing paradigm is to go from hypothesis to data collection to analysis. That is to have a question already in mind and then to answer it. But that requires that we have the right question. Are we, ladies and gentlemen, always asking the right question? Some of us undoubtedly have asked the right question in the past, but quite frankly, my hypotheses are often wrong. And so I ask the wrong questions. What can I do? I can now use the data rather than come up with a concrete hypothesis already and do the analysis, and out of the analysis come up with a question that drives the hypothesis. This inductive process is more pragmatic. It works. It already does. Duolingo is a company out there that creates an app that you can download for free on your smartphone, helps you learn a foreign language. Now, tens of millions of people learn a foreign language with Duolingo every single day. They gather a lot of data about what mistakes people make learning a foreign language. And so the engineers at Duolingo said, let's look at the data. Maybe we find some interesting pattern that we were unaware of. Fishing expedition. And they found a really interesting pattern. And that pattern basically said that Spanish speakers learn English the wrong way. That is, they learn it just fine until they hit a particular lesson introducing a grammar concept, and then success rate plummets. When you take this lesson and sequence it somewhere else in the entire learning sequence, success rate goes through the roof. That's why Duolingo is the best way for Spanish speakers to learn English today. But more importantly, the question is here, Why didn't my colleagues at Oxford University come up with this great insight? Are they too stupid? Certainly not. But the truth is, they don't have the data. They still operate with 20, 30 poor freshmen or sophomores who are guinea pigs, while Duolingo operates with millions of people's real-time data. It is a way to use data to stimulate new questions, not just to answer existing questions. It's like using the technology that we have not just to try to get this one needle out of the haystack by pulling one thing out, but searching through the entire haystack. It's turbocharging human discovery. How far can we go? Life and death questions too? Sometimes people think that they can. In fact, there is a research team in Canada around Dr. Carolyn McGregor looking at preemies, prematurely born babies, and gathering vital signs sensor data from them in real time, collecting about 1,200 data points per second per preemie, and then doing that over time, looking for patterns in the data that with a high degree of likelihood would predict the onset of a later infection that until now has often been caught too late. And they were able to find such a pattern. And so today, they can save thousands of preemies' lives. Now, what is really interesting is they have no idea why the pattern they found predicts the later onset of an infection. And if you ask them what that pattern is, it isn't that the vital signs go crazy, but that the vital signs suddenly stabilize in preemies. And that means danger 24 hours later. It's this unintuitive, counterintuitive insight that really offers us a new perspective on reality if we let the data speak. Because data, ladies and gentlemen, has value. And we need to understand that the value of data is changing as we enter this big data world. In the past, we gathered data in order to answer a question we already had. Then we threw the data out. In the future, we understand that data is like an iceberg that has latent value. And this value can be reaped by reusing the data for different novel purposes over and over again. Google is reusing search query data in order to make predictions about the spread of the flu. German airlines Lufthansa is reusing weather data that is gathered for the autopilot to fly the airplanes. And this weather data is sent to German weather forecasting agencies and has improved weather forecast in Germany by 7%, a reuse of data. Or internet startup PriceStats out of MIT is using pricing data at Amazon and eBay and many other sites on the internet, gathering about 1 billion price points every single day in order to make inflation predictions in real time. Or Yahoo, Stanford, and Microsoft is using search query data that Bing receives in order to find adverse drug interactions that were unknown. And FICO, a financial information company, is using socio-demographic data in order to create a medication prediction score that predicts the likelihood of each one of us taking his or her medication on time. All of this is changing how we approach the world. And no sector is going to be untouched. Of course, we talk a lot about driving and self-driving cars these days, a big data application. But you know what? Self-driving cars isn't so much about cute little cars finding their own way. It is about being able to share a resource among each other that currently we use exclusively, our cars, and therefore be much more sustainable in the resource use that we have, use fewer parking spots, use and produce less congestion on our roads. But it's not just mobility that changes with big data, it's human learning that changes. See, we are stupid enough in many ways in our society to still mass produce education, even though we know that people wear different things, have different preferences and different likings. Why are we still mass producing education? Because we just don't know better and don't have the data to individualize. That is going to change. And of course, medicine and health is going to change. Here we will move from comparing primarily across people to comparing primarily across time and to individualizing our data gathering. We may look at the next insight way beyond where we have looked so far because our human imagination, even though amazing, is insufficient to capture the complexity of reality. And we will, in the future, value the pattern like Dr. McGregor did, and sometimes pragmatically act on what we know, not just why something happens. It's a wild world, an interesting, amazing, challenging world in which we are entering. The discount store chain Target uses data in order to make predictions about when their female customers are pregnant, sometimes knowing pregnancy before their female customers do. Now, if this makes you uneasy, you are not alone. Many people are uneasy about our ability to capture so much data and then to make predictions from them. And what is centrally important, ladies and gentlemen, is that we take their concerns to heart. Because if people become distrustful of the power of insight derived from data, they will not cooperate providing the data to us. And without data, there can be no data insight. So what is crucially important, ladies and gentlemen, is to make sure that there is trust in how the data is being used, especially as it pertains to health and medical data. And trust comes with responsibility and responsible use. Trust and responsibility in this data age are the currency of big data sustainability. But make no mistake, the real challenge isn't trust. See, a study in the United States has shown that cars of the color orange have the least repair cost. Stop. Half of you are already thinking in your mind, why is this the case? Is it because an orange car is specially built? Is it because an orange car is more visible at night? Is it because orange car drivers are more careful as they are driving down the road? Stop it. The data does not tell you why. It just tells you what? Correlation, not causality. And the moment you take that data and you reinterpret it to give it causal meaning where it doesn't have causal meaning, that moment you fall prey to the dictatorship of data. And you're abusing the data. See, the problem isn't the data itself, the problem is how we use it. The problem is us. Once again, because we are primed to see the world as sequences of causes and effects, even though the data oftentimes doesn't tell us. So we need to be careful. What's the future going to bring, ladies and gentlemen? With big data, we will make better decisions about medical treatments and medical diagnosis. We will make better decisions about scientific insights. We will make better decisions about anything from healthcare costs to educational processes and educational systems being set up, all the way to how cars drive themselves to work and home. But we need to make sure that we remain squarely the masters of this new perspective. That as vital as it is to learn from big data, it's also vital to understand that we need to carve out a space for the human, a space for what the data cannot tell us, a space for our creativity, our originality, for our irrationality, and for sometimes acting against what the data says. Because at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, data, as powerful and important as it is just a reflection of reality and not reality itself. And so let us enter this very amazing big data age with a huge portion of humility and an equally huge portion of humanity. Thanks very much.